Hey, I'm back again. Um, Welcome to my office. We're gonna do some cool stuff today. Um, I wanted to show you a picture of my desk right now. Alright, so that's my desk, and there's a couple of cool things I want to show you today. Um, you might have seen this right here. It's a stack of cards. No cards, and I write nifty little notes on them that I usually ignore, and I put them up on my magnetic wall. We'll get to that. And it shows me what's going to happen and stuff like that. Recently, I've been using it as a kind of loading bar. I put a card up with the name of a chapter on it, and then when I write the next chapter, and then the next chapter, and I see it slowly go across my wall, and that's how I know that I'm making progress. It's very, the word I would use is inspirational. You might have noticed a couple of things in the last video. One, I rock back and forth a lot. I hope it's not too distracting. I know it is kind of distracting. It's because of my abusive childhood. One of the things that happens is, in order for me to self-soothe and calm myself down when I'm nervous, I rock back and forth like this. You might also know, because I'm doing it right now, you might also notice that my hands, my fingers move when I'm talking. Usually that is because I'm kind of making things up as I go along. And it's, if you are watching real close, you can see that what I'm doing is actually typing. This happens anytime I'm being creative or thinking a lot and talking about it. It's just a kind of twitch that's happened because I've written so much. So you're gonna see a lot of that. You might have noticed it in the last video, like my fingers are always moving because I'm typing. Let's see, what else do I want to explain? Oh yeah, my ceiling. You guys saw my ceiling with all of the sarongs and flags on it and stuff. You may have seen the Don't Tread on Me flag. And the reason I have that up is it's kind of been used in the last however many decades as the symbol for the Second Amendment. But I don't really see it as that. That's why I got the yellow one. I tie it to the American Revolution and when the flag was actually created. And because I consider myself a kind of revolutionary, some of the most powerful revolutionary minds that ever existed were writers. And we have writers, I see my writing as having a kind of call to arms. All my books are about something. All my books talk about one issue or the other. The example I'm going to give you is the Madness Wars. I myself did not have a strong father figure. And so the Madness Wars is kind of me trying to understand fathers. There's a lot of fathers in the Madness Wars. A lot of relationships between fathers and sons are discussed in the Madness Wars. If you look for it, you can see it everywhere. I dedicated all of the books to various father figures that I have had, that have been healthy father figures. And so all my books talk about something. And that's why I have the flag up, and that's why I consider myself a revolutionary. Now, I have opinions on firearms and the Second Amendment, but you guys don't need to know about that. You don't need to know how I feel about politics, and it's not really something that needs to be discussed, especially here. So I'm gonna keep that out. Today I want to focus on an individual that is a very good friend of mine. In my book, my autobiography, I'm sorry, in my autobiography, I refer to him as the Cannibal. I'm going to read you the chapter that the Cannibal is in. But first I want to talk about one more thing. If you were listening at all to the last video, you may have noticed that I'll say the wrong word sometimes. The big one was this one right here. Writing is not interesting, where I was talking about writing, and I said, writing for me is not, and then the word that came out of my mouth was interesting, which I think anybody who knows me knows that I'm obsessed with it. And then I changed that to easy. Writing is not easy for me. The reason that interesting came out is because there's always a lot of things going on and running through my mind at the same time. We'll get into some of that. But I have different trains of thought moving at the same time, 4 or 5 of them, and so it's hard for me to concentrate. So a lot of times what I'm thinking will pop out from another train of thought. So that's part of the dyslexia, and that's part of just the way that my mind works. Oh, somebody's at the door. I think it's Sadie. She knows how to open the door, so she's gonna come in. I'm gonna let her do it herself. Yeah, there she is. My Rottweiler's back in the room. Anyway, that is one of those things that we're gonna have to deal with. I'm a nervous wreck all the time. I am certifiably crazy. We'll get into all of that later. It's not important. But I just wanted to let you know that when I'm in front of this camera, I am kind of a nervous wreck. And I'm going to stumble over my words, and I'm going to get a lot wrong. So just bear with me and try to see what I'm trying to do, even if I'm not good at it. Okay, let's talk about the Cannibal. The Cannibal, disclaimer. The Cannibal is going to hate almost everything I say about him. He's a humble man and will not allow himself to agree with me at all. However, I am a man, a free man, who is allowed his opinion and is allowed to express it. This is my opinion. I speak now, not his. The Cannibal likes to keep a garden. The Cannibal prefers video chat because he likes to look at you when he speaks to you. The Cannibal thrives in the cold and shuts himself away in the high corners of North America and the wilds of Canada. Do you see? Everything I say about this guy is terrifying. All I have to do is call him the Cannibal, and he chills your blood. I do this for 2 reasons. One is a chilling scene from one of his novels. The other is, I need you to fear and respect this man because he is the king of self-published grimdark fantasy, crawling out of the dark and roaring in the community. He's the master of darkness when he writes, and I want you to see that. Now, I'm not sure about the garden thing. We never spoke about growing anything. That's not true. I talked to him later, and the man does keep a garden, a big garden. I didn't know that, but now you do. Never spoke about growing anything, and I don't think he eats people, but again, that's never come up. That hasn't come up. But the Cannibal is not to be ignored. He has given me hope and guidance, and I call him a friend. Let's back up and get a run at this. I was waiting to be announced. When I told Becca what I meant, she said it never happens, but I told her she was wrong. Then I sat by and waited. When I was announced, it was a reviewing god who did it. He read Chased and said, Jesse Teller is a new voice in grimdark fantasy, and if you like your books dark and bloody as hell, then he might as well be your new favorite author. This was said on a well-respected and highly critical blog by a guy who sets the bar and runs the blog himself. Booknest is huge, and its master had just announced me. I expected to be picked up. I expected the fantasy world would read and come seeking me and my work, but it fell to nothing. We used the quote to try to get big reviewers to take me seriously, and they all walked away. We quoted him and asked him when the next book came out if he wanted to read it, but all of that fell flat too. I was announced to no fanfare and began to fall into obscurity. Every now and then, a reviewer would pick up one of my books and give it an excellent review, but when we asked them if they wanted to read the next, they would agree and shelf it. No traction, no readers, no reviewers stalking me, but people were talking, and I was talking back. I began to give my spiel, began talking about my master plan and my magnum opus, and everyone laughed at me. Because it sounds ridiculous. Any writer will tell you that my career, as I have said it, is impossible. And when I tell them what I'm doing, no one takes me seriously. We're going to get into all that on another blog. Stick with Cannibal. One night I was exhausted. I'd been up writing for 24 hours. I was shocked and dazed, and a comment was made, and I broke. I started talking about my creativity, productivity, started telling them what I was doing, and I told them I'd written 5 series. I told them that I vowed to never publish a book in a series until all of the series was done. And I made the ludicrous vow that I would publish a new book every April 15th and October 5th. A guy grabbed the comment and posted it on a major fantasy discussion page, and I was ripped into by a pack of jackals. Now, he asked me if he could post it, and I told him yeah, because I thought it would help, but it did not. They said my books had to be terrible. They told me I could never do what I was pledging to do and still create quality. They asked who writes 5 books before they publish any. They got that wrong. It was 5 series. One woman asked what would happen when the outline stopped and I found myself in the middle of a series with no ending for it. Again, they got that wrong. They were not outlines, they were fully written novels. They tore me apart. The Alchemist defended me. A few caring hearts defended me. But for the most part, I was a joke. I pretty much am, but people are starting to see that what I said I would do, I'm actually doing. Anyway, a traditionally published writer came out and pounded on me for a while. You guys don't need to know his name. I'm not here to bash him. None of these people had read any of my work, but there was meat on the ground and everybody wanted to tenderize it. See, I am the lunatic. No one wants to believe what I'm saying. In the self-published fantasy world, it's all about lists. Top 10 reads of the year. Greatest female grimdark writers of the decade. Greatest series. Darkest writer. The world around me compiles as many lists as I can, and most of them ignore the lunatic. But they're starting to see that I am off in the distance building a mad construction. They're starting to see I'm keeping my promises, and as more reviews trickle in, they're getting quiet. The reviewers are helping. They don't read the books, but they have started hosting blogs. I've written on their site. They talk to me in certain circles. They talk about me in certain circles, and they all see I'm quietly building something they've never seen before. One reviewer, who's a pretty good friend of mine, said if I had been published 20 years ago, he truly believed that I would be a legend by now. He talks about me all the time, gets a hold of the chat, but he still has never read my books. A few readers have read it all. They see the of what I'm doing. They come to leave reviews at the base of my construct. But when they yell about me and tell everyone to read me, few listen. One more bit before we get back to the Cannibal and why he's so important. In self-published fantasy, it's all about reputation. Let's say you read another writer's work and they're a friend of yours. If you sing its praises, even though you didn't like it, the readers you're trying to impress will judge your vision of quality. You say a book is good and it's not. Your potential readers think, this writer does not know a good book from a bad. They don't even take the time to read what you wrote, thinking you have bad taste. So when the Cannibal stepped out of the gloom and spoke about Dead Girl, stopped my heart. We knew almost nothing about him. He was dark. His book, As Dark as the King. He was good. There was a hushed whisper when reviewers spoke his name. He had published Kings of Paradise, and the story behind his creation was rippling out before it. See, the Cannibal had a good job, a job he was trained for. But he saved his money and quit his job to crawl into his basement and create his masterpiece. He was good, so good as to be one of the best. And even as he broke the gloom and stepped out into the light of the fantasy world, everyone watched with bated breath for what he'd do next. Dead Girl is a novella I was giving away as a freebie in my newsletter. It's not anymore. I took it out, put it in a book called Legends of the Exiles, and you can read it there, along with a bunch of other novellas that tie in together. But at this point, I was using it as my freebie. Now I'm using different set of short stories on my freebie, and they're completely, they can't be understood. There's so much tied into them, and they attach to so many different things. One of the things we're going to do on this channel is we're going to read all of them and pick them apart and show what they're about and what they tie into and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, Dead Girl is a novella, and I was giving it away as a freebie in my newsletter. We had it up on Goodreads. We got a few reviews for it. But again, only dust was blowing around my work, and it was easy to set me at the bottom of your to-be-read pile and put it off. Dead Girl is dark. It's about a girl who's been molested and how she deals with her abuse and the horrors that came after it. It is so heartbreaking and so uplifting. It may be the most beautiful thing I've ever written if you take it by itself, and when the Cannibal started to make his name, he took Dead Girl and stepped off into the darkness again. When he came back, he praised it. That year, when they asked for the greatest reads of the year, no one mentioned me except the Cannibal. He stepped forward to make his list, and his comment said this and this alone: Dead Girl by Jesse Teller. Then he walked away. But I pulled close. When I think my work is crap, when I'm left off lists and ignored by my peers, I go to the Cannibal. Because he's the king of us. He came out with a trilogy quickly and decisively, and it is breathtaking. Set it before us all and walked away. The Ash and Sand trilogy is the very best self-published fantasy you can find. No one's doing any better. Ask the reviewers who lay accolades at his feet. Ask anybody who takes their fantasy seriously, and they'll whisper the name of the Cannibal. And he's my friend. He counts me as his equal. Ask for advice and he gives it. Ask me for advice and he gives it. He is there for me every time I reach out for him. The Cannibal knows me. The Cannibal is watching. And the Cannibal is behind me. Alright, so that's what I wrote about the Cannibal. And what we're going to do right now is we're going to call him. We're going to get him up here and see if we can get him talking about his work, about writing in general, about anything he might want to talk about. So here we go. Let's try to find the Cannibal. All right, everybody. Here he is. Here's the Cannibal.
Good day, sir.
You guys probably know him as Richard now. So we're going to start this how we always start our conversations. What's the weather like over there, man? Is it still snowing metal?
It is not great. It is minus 25 degrees Celsius, which is, I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, you crazy Yanks, but it's cold. It's below zero for you, for sure. Minus 40 is the same. So I don't know. It's close to minus 20 for you, probably.
Okay, so tell me about you got to tell the story about the snowing metal thing, the blizzard.
The snowing metal thing.
Yeah, remember it almost took off your head?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so what he is referring to, good people of the internet, is there was a blizzard here in Saskatchewan, Canada is where I live, which is a very flat, very snowy, very cold place with just about nothing to do. Just ask my wife. And there was a blizzard, the likes of which I don't think I've ever seen in my lifetime, about a week ago. and the winds were up to like 100 kilometers an hour, which is 60 miles per hour. And I thought in my insanity that I would go for a walk.
Seems like a
But
personal, reasonable thing to do, right?
yeah, well, it's just how many times are you going to walk in a blizzard? I mean, like that, right?
Right.
But I didn't really think about it too much. And then I soon saw metal signs, pieces of houses flying around my backyard and back alley. And I thought, this is not the wisest thing that I've ever done in my life. And then wisdom did strike, and I fled back for the safety of my house. Story over.
Okay.
That's as exciting as it gets for me.
That would have been an interesting death, though. So, like, in warrior societies, all the guys are looking for a great death, right? And you getting your head cut off in a blizzard would have been cool.
It would, but like in a story, I would have been fighting my arch nemesis in the blizzard.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't just be the blizzard that killed me.
Unless you want to do a man versus nature kind of thing.
That's true. Like, that's how it finally got me. I survived like 6 months on my own in the wolf covered wilderness, and then I came home, I walked in a blizzard, dead.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah.
Called Drogo death.
I was once, I was once out in the middle of Wisconsin during the winter. You know, the snow's up to my thighs. And I fight my way through this odd little forest. And I'm sitting on this stool at the end of the forest that looks out over this big bowl of snowy Wisconsin weather. And at one point, I was surrounded by a pack of wolves. And, like, that's, like, terrifying, right? There was, like, 8 of them. So I decided, you know, this is how I die. And I thought, it's a pretty good death. Like, that's legendary, right? Like, when they're talking about Jesse Teller and he was killed by a pack of wolves, that's... So I was totally fine with it. So I closed my eyes, and I pulled down my scarf and my coat, and I just waited. And when I didn't die, I looked around, and there were paw prints everywhere. They came right up to me and then walked away.
They just didn't want any of that.
I guess they like scared meat.
Maybe you just had a scent they didn't like, you know, they thought, nah.
Yeah, I get that a lot from my wife. So, do you remember Flim Flam?
Do I remember what?
Flim Flam.
Flim Flam. What?
Yeah. You don't remember Flim Flam? It was that sale that we did.
Yeah.
Tomes of Arcane Wonder or something?
Yeah. Okay, so explain this to the people of the internet.
All right. If you weren't around a couple years ago, me and Richard got to talking about doing a sale together. And I asked if I could pull in a couple other people. And we put together pretty much a dream team. We got M.L. Spencer and Devin Madsen, and she's traditionally published now. And we got Rob Hayes, and we got Benedict Patrick. And he wanted to do kind of like a traveling, like oddities kind of caravan kind of theme thing.
I think that's probably some sort of commentary on the rest of us, isn't it?
Yeah. The travel.
Like, you know what you guys remind me of? A bunch of circus freaks.
Yeah. But he's such an interesting guy, and he ought to do audiobooks or something, man. Do you remember the voice he came up with and all that stuff?
And he had a few different voices too. Like he tested 1 or 2 out.
Yeah. It was cool because he announced like our little blurb and all that kind of stuff. You know, if there was anybody that I think is more mysterious than you, I think it would be Benedict Patrick. None of us None of us know anything about him
Uh,
except that he's in Scotland and he likes cake.
oh, is he in Scotland? I knew he was in Great Britain somewhere. But I don't know if you've read any of his stuff, but it's very fairy tale, but like real fairy tale, like
Yeah,
dark,
yeah,
Hansel and Gretel get eaten fairy tale.
yeah.
And it's great stuff. The first time I read one was on a plane, and I got just absorbed. It's like a 2 or 3 hour flight, and usually I just hate flying. Just the worst parts about humanity all rolled in together. Other than, you get to travel several hundred kilometers in this time of an afternoon. It would have taken your ancestors like 3 years and some shit,
Right.
and they would have lost 3 people to dysentery. So that's pretty great. But I'm reading his book, and I just was totally engaged. And I looked up, and I was wherever the hell I was going. So, well done him. That's always the sign to me of a great story.
Yeah, he's the guy I wish I was talking to and wish I was friends with.
Like right now, it's like I wish I had him right now.
No,
But,
no, like as my other friend.
Yeah.
So yeah, so he looks respectable too. So
Oh yeah, he does.
he's
Yeah,
got that on us.
but I've read his stuff. It's a mask.
Okay.
It's just like the rest of us. Beneath
Yeah, he's got a black heart.
the thin veneer of respectability, there's a madman.
Yeah, Becca read his work and was just blown away by him.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, unless if you don't have I love writers, I love comedians, I love anybody who's got that. If you're not sort of a madman on the inside, I don't know, you're kind of boring to me.
Yeah.
Tell me something ridiculous. I want to hear, either be funny or entertaining. I don't know, lie to me, do anything.
Right.
That's why I like fiction. So let me ask you a question. What got you into fiction? Like when did you write your first, like not like childish story, but like real story where you thought, I'm going to try and write a story that other people might read?
Okay, so I guess my first real story was, if you get past all the childish stuff, like
Yeah.
my purple hippopotamus, and you get to like the real, like what I'm doing now kind of thing, it was an assignment my freshman year of high school. And we were supposed to write a short story, and it was around Halloween, so we had to have like a Halloween theme to it. So mine started, and I can't remember exact wording, and but it was like they ripped out my guts and carved designs in my skin and placed me on display out on their porch in the cold with only a candle to warm me and all this kind of stuff. And it becomes very obvious that we're talking about a jack-o'-lantern. And then, so it was a concept piece, so there's no plot at all. Like, at one point, this jack-o'-lantern, who's completely ignorant to all things, watches this guy stumble up the walkway, holding his neck, bleeding. And he collapses, and another guy with blood around his mouth and fangs comes and grabs him and drags him away. So it was a vampire story. It was really gruesome. But yeah, that was the first like grimdark thing I ever wrote.
Is it weird that that's almost exactly what I expected? I thought the first thing that Teller's going to have written, some kind of horrific, get your guts ripped out.
I brought that to a 9th grade high school class.
Yeah, I'm sure that went over really well. So what did you want? When you wrote that, were you thinking, I'm going to shock the shit out of these people and they're going to like it? Or what was going on?
It wasn't like that at all.
Okay, you reached out and that's what came?
I thought I was just writing a story. I wasn't trying to be edgy. I wasn't trying to be dark. Right. I thought she asked for a Halloween story. She wants something creepy.
Yep.
I'm going to dial down the crazy and just give her this. So that's what happened. And I had to, of course, it's high school and ninth grade, so you're at your most awkward. And she made me stand up in front of the whole class and read it.
Oh,
So
that's the worst.
she's sitting in the back of the class.
What is with ninth grade? My English teacher, she made us memorize lines from Romeo and Juliet and then recite them in front of the class alone.
Yeah, that's pretty horrific.
Like when I think about that, if I was a ninth grade English teacher and I was forced to try and get young people interested in literature, like that's like a torture. It's like, how can I turn people off of literature forever? I'm going to get them to recite Romeo and Juliet alone in front of a cluster of their peers, with acne on their face and like baggy sweaters, and like it's just horrific.
Yeah. Well, she was sitting in the back of the class, and I read it. Of course, I'm staring at the paper, and my hands are trembling until I get into the story. And once I got into the story, my entire voice changed. My hands calmed down. I was there. I wasn't even in front of class anymore. So I read it, and then looked up, saw everybody. I was like, oh, shit. And then she jumped to her feet and started, like, applauding.
Oh, really?
That's great. God, that's awesome. And she comes in, and she grabs the paper, and she says, did everybody see what he did? Did everybody catch what he did? And she read it out loud again to the whole class and explained it all to them, so nobody missed it. And it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's a great teacher right there.
Yeah, she was the one that got me back into writing. She gave me that assignment on October 5th, like 91, I think, or 90. And so out of respect and like an homage to her, I publish a book every October 5th. But
that's funny that on the back of my story about how horrific my English teacher was, you then flip it to a great English teacher. Fine, well done.
Yeah, I had to outdo you.
To the English teachers out there, obviously, there's respect coming from one side of this conversation.
No, dude, this is good for you. I had a pleasant experience. You suffered through hell and had to walk through the fires of...
She was the worst. I don't remember her name, which is unfortunate. I wish I could just out her right now. It's like destroying the dreams. But she didn't stop me, obviously, so
yeah.
Maybe I can't give her too much credit or too much shit. I don't know.
Yeah. I had another thing that teacher did was she gave us this assignment that we had to memorize and recite a poem for the class. And she gave us the assignment, and I raised my hand, and she's like, yeah. And I said, can I do mine now? And she was like, what? And I said, can I do mine now? And she goes, I guess. I said, do I have to stand in front of the class? And she said, no. And so I did a Kipling piece from Jungle Books, which is, nobody gives the Jungle Book the love that they should. Mowgli is like a tiny short story in that book. There's so much more there. But it opens with a poem, and I think it's called Song of the Night Hunters. And it goes, now chill the kite brought back the night that Mang the bat set free. The herds are shut in briar and hut, for loosed till dawn are we. This is the hour of pride and power, talon, tush, and claw. Come hear the call, good hunting all that keep the jungle law.
But when you started reading that, like deep in my lizard brain, it was coming back.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
Like, when you said the name of the poem, I thought, I don't remember that at all. And then you started reading it, and I could just about see the page.
No, I wasn't reading it. I was reciting it, but I'll let you go on that.
Okay.
But that line, who writes like that? That line, this is the hour. No.
Nobody anymore.
For loosed till dawn are we. This is the hour of pride and power.
I mean, come on. How do you not stand in awe of that?
Well, yeah, it's funny. It's sort of an interesting conversation. Maybe I don't know. We can get there eventually, but writing changes. Obviously, language changes for good or ill. But you just can't read anything like that anymore. I don't know if you've ever. Do you read much poetry anymore? Is that a thing that you do?
Not really. My wife writes poetry, so I'm starting
Right.
to get back into it.
And when I was a younger man, as many young artists do, I suppose, I thought, oh well, yes, I'll be a poet. And I was in university. I went to these poetry slam bars where they snap instead of clap, and I wore dark clothing. And let's be honest, I was trying to get laid, but uh, this was all the rage, and people were writing poems. And so while I was there, I was like, okay, well, I'll write poems. And what I quickly learned is that I absolutely despise modern poetry.
Yeah.
It doesn't, typically it's, I don't know what they call it, postmodern, whatever. It doesn't mean anything. They've stopped trying to tell stories, which to me is utterly to have lost the concept of the thing in the first place. I mean, if you go back to the bards and the skalds and what is poetry? It's the spoken story. Anyway, they've lost that completely. So now they just say things in half rhymes, and they use beautiful imagery or sort of abstract imagery, and you're not even supposed to know what it means.
Yeah.
And I just don't know what the hell happened. I don't know what it says about us as a culture, or as a literary culture at least, but nobody writes like that anymore.
Well, I'm gonna plug my wife. She does write stories. She's writing autobiographies, little stories about her life, and she rhymes.
Right.
And
nobody does that either.
When she's reciting it, it starts to roll like 4 lines in. It starts to roll like a rap. So It sounds like she's rapping.
And maybe that's what it is. Maybe hip hop, rap music has just taken over. So that's why poetry's kind of dead, because music just took it.
Yeah, that's quite possible.
Maybe took it back is the right way to say it.
Yeah. Top 3 greatest works of art that inspire the most that are not writing. What would they be?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I know, hey?
3 greatest pieces of art that are not writing?
Do you want me to go first?
Sure. I mean, they would all be music, which is something I was going to ask you about, but you go first.
Okay. So, on that list, I'm not going to do them in any kind of order. On that list has to be Painted Black by the Rolling Stones. There is just something haunting about that song. And it's one of those things where I had to learn that riff when I started getting serious about the bass. So I like playing on bass all the time.
Oh, I didn't know that.
What?
I did not know that.
Yeah, I play on bass. The opening to this video is a bass line that I played and recorded. That is the bass line to the Goat song. You heard about my Barbarian drinking song about goats?
Oh yeah. Maybe we'll get to that later.
I wrote the bass line to that song, recorded it, and use it as the intro and the outro of these videos. But okay, so that Painted Black has to be on there. There was a painter that my wife studied under in college. It was at SMSU back when SMSU was called SMSU. Now it's MSU. And while he was teaching her, he was working on this piece. There was actually 5 paintings with screen printing on it. And it was called The 5 Capital Executions of China. And they were all paintings of different ways China used to and still does execute its criminals. And I remember I went to a a faculty arts show, and they had you walking through this thing, and you were looking at all the walls, and I'm walking, and oh, that's real good, that's real good, and Becca's doing everything she can not to snicker at me, and we walk, and we go along like this, and there's a wall behind me. I'm looking at this, I'm like, this is really good, and she goes, okay. She says, I want you to turn around and look at what's behind you. So I turn around, and there is this massive, I think it was like 6 by 15 or something. It was huge painting of, on one side, it had a row of these like wooden cages that had their arms were bound outside of the bars. And there was a top that covered their heads like this, and they were looking up. And on the other side was this huge feast. And the piece was called Starvation. And because that's how they used to, that was one of the ways that in the past China has executed its criminals. And so, so we had that. And what I noticed was that there was this very odd shape that was kind of a watermark that came down, and it was 3 pieces, and it came across, it looked kind of like a trident, right? Only it was a very, very, like, almost pyramid-like top to it. So he did 5 of those. He did starvation, flaying, drawing and quartering, decapitation, and firing squad. Okay, all of them showed the grisly way these people were executed, and at the same time it showed one beautiful aspect of the culture. And I went to a lecture that he was giving on the piece itself, and he said that the watermark thing was actually, I think it was called the Emperor's Dagger. And it was this huge piece that used to like hang out in like the courtyard of the Emperor's castle, and they would impale criminals on it. And it was like 20 feet tall. I'm getting the dimensions wrong, but he had it watermarked over the whole piece. You could see it, but when I saw it, I didn't know what it meant. It was like, I knew that there was something there, and I knew that I was missing it, you know? So, so I started thinking about that with writing, and realizing that, like, I could put things in my work that nobody would notice unless they could notice, you know, unless they knew what they were looking at, they wouldn't notice. And so I started doing this, started putting things in, hiding symbolism in my work that you have to know what you're looking at in order to see it, you know. So that's what I learned from Z. He was brilliant.
So Halloween, you know, your first story is a guy getting his guts ripped out.
Right.
Faded black, and then you're inspired by a horrific beauty torture scene. At least you're consistent.
Okay, I got another one for you. I don't know what this painting is called. I have no idea who painted it. I do not know the style of the painting. And it is just, it's got, it's a stony kind of rocky background. You realize you're in some kind of forest, and there is a red-headed lady laid out, and she's obviously suffering. And I don't even know what the name of the painting is, but I know that's Lilith, and she's been cast out of paradise, and that's the scene of Lilith. It's the classic beauty, the body of the classic beauty, and she's naked, and she's got red hair. I know nothing else. so I can't throw out props to the artist or even direct people to what it's called or what it looks like. But I saw that and saw like the painting really captures this this feeling of despair. She's not hurt, she's not bleeding, she's not bruised. But you can feel despair radiating off of this painting. And those are my top three.
I thought for your third one you'd bring a little hope. You know, no, just straight down into the gutter.
Okay, well, you're judging me now. I want to hear yours. Okay, if I'm so dark and twisted, I want to hear your beautiful pieces. So tell me about your favorite unicorn picture, Richard.
Not only am I judging you, I'm just going to break the rules and not do what you did. I can't. I don't have three pieces like that. In writing it'd be closer, but I guess I'm a bit of a mercurial character. Like what I love one day is average the next day, and I'm on to a new thing. And this is something I wanted to ask. I wanted to ask you about this music. So you said you played the bass.
Okay, wait, hold on now. This is good. You're gonna give me your three. This is good because mine is like a deep into the past, like what threw me around. Yours is a flash of the present and where you are.
That's correct.
Right now. So show us what it is that is inspiring you at this moment, which is just as relevant.
Yeah, that's a good question. So yes, I'm not sentimental at all. I used to work in the real world at an office. There was literally nothing on my walls. People would come in and think they were in a prison cell. I'm not a visual guy either. I don't, you're talking about paintings. I don't really like paintings. I don't understand them. I have a very vivid imagination, I suppose. I see things in my brain. And so because I live in a place, this is true of a lot of Canadian prairie writers, I think. There's not very much to look at here. It's a flat prairie. There's no mountains. There's nothing. There's no sea. I think we develop sort of an inner eye to protect ourselves from the banality of our existence.
Okay.
And so, our visual art never does it for me. It's always been music.
Okay.
And I love just about every kind of music. I like some more than others, but I don't judge any genre. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
And when I'm writing, I literally can't be inspired without it. If I didn't have music, I could sort of do it in my head, but I have to have something. And in my experience, and that's what I'm going to ask you, I haven't met a writer who doesn't have some fairly intimate connection to music. You can be a lawyer, you can be a nonfiction maybe writer, but I've never met a fiction writer who, even if they're not a musician, even if they don't play anything, they still have a deep love that they can't even articulate for music. Right. Have you experienced that, or
I have.
Does that ring a bell to you?
I've talked to a lot of writers that do have common, a relationship with music. Yeah.
Yeah.
And other artists too. The other artists that I've had in my life, they have a tendency to be drawn towards music. So tell me what you're listening to.
Okay, so like I'm writing a book right now, and it's totally based on the scene. Whatever the scene of the movie, whatever I'm trying to draw from. If I want this scene to be epic or glorious, whatever, I'll listen to a song on repeat, and I'll listen to it obsessively for 4 hours straight.
Okay.
Because I'm very obsessive. Let's put it that way. And right. So, the most recent scene I was doing, I turned on, and this is a beautiful song. It's the theme to Man of Steel.
Okay.
The Superman movie.
Okay, I get it.
This scene is supposed to be this character in this epic moment, and that song, it's a story.
Yeah.
Almost all the music I love are like that. They tell a story. They'll start off one, and music is always like that. It's questions and answers to me. And it just draws out that feeling, and then usually that translates into the page. Usually there's a lot of editing afterwards because I go overboard, and I always pull it back. But yeah, so that's one example. What's another one? Damian Rice.
Yeah,
I've
you
been
sent me
listening.
some Damian Rice in a message one day.
Yep, he's a big one. I've been listening to that a lot. I've got sort of almost musicians that are sort of the voice of certain characters, and
Yeah,
so
I get that.
once I've got that in my head, I kind of can't get it out, and then I'll listen to that over and over again. So that's two. Oh, what's a good third? It's funny. There's a lot of I've been listening to a lot of superhero stuff. Another one was Batman music from The Dark Knight. What the hell is that guy's name?
Listen, Richard, I want you to feel as this is a safe space. You can talk about your Britney Spears thing.
Yeah, I would love to talk about my Britney Spears addiction, but actually, I'm pretty hard. I try not to judge, art too harshly. Everything's got its place, but God, some modern pop music, I think, is this a joke? Is this a spoof?
Okay, I get it. I'm gonna go the other way. So like when I get towards the end of the book, I start writing obsessively and start putting out big numbers, and like I'll write 5 chapters a night sometimes, or maybe more. So what I do is I'll write a chapter. It's usually in one point of view, and then I have to write another chapter right afterwards in a different point of view. And so I need some kind of palate cleanser to like pull me completely out of that. So I can't listen to something like the Superman thing, because then it'll keep me in the point of view of what I was writing.
Right.
So usually I end up with like Miley Cyrus or
God damn it, Teller.
Taylor Swift. And I listen to that. And not like the respectable Miley Cyrus, like when she got edgy, but like
if you're gonna go Miley Cyrus, you might as well go the whole way. I mean,
Party in the USA, Miley Cyrus.
Yeah.
But like I'll listen to that and it'll be so jarring. It's like splashing cold water in your face. And so I'm immediately pulled out of what I was looking at. I'll watch the video like 4 or 5 times and then throw myself into something new, and that's what gets me through. But
the beauty of American culture is just how diverse it is. You've got like Johnny Cash.
oh yeah, Johnny.
You've got like the Midwestern cowboy, all the way to Miley Cyrus, and everything in between. And that's just in like the country side, and then you get to the coasts, and you've just got it all. What a beautiful. We Canadians, we just stare up or down south, I guess, just in fascination. We have our own interesting cultures, but there's just somehow it's not as dramatic. It just doesn't run the full gamut.
Yeah.
But we do have there's a guy I really like now, Coulter Wall, I think is his name. He's a Saskatchewan musician. Kind of sounds like he smoked the ashes of Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
That's
great. I love that.
And he just drinks it down with whiskey every day. And he's a young man, but you'd never believe. You got to listen to this guy's voice. So we've got that, but then we also have Justin Bieber.
Yeah.
So I guess fair enough. I guess we've got the same dynamic going on.
There's a guy, I can't remember his name, but you have to look up this song. It's absolutely amazing. It's called Thistledown Tears.
Okay.
It's a country song. It's the only song I've ever heard by this guy. But I'm telling you, man, the imagery he puts into his work is breathtaking. I know that there's one lyric that says, "Hearts made of flint and words made of steel." It's just, the work he's doing in that song is just breathtaking. And
Songwriters, man, because they've got to be so efficient,
yeah,
they can make some beautiful lyrics.
so check out Thistledown Tears.
Okay.
You won't be sorry. I don't remember what the name of the guy is. I should have looked
Yeah,
it up.
Google will do the work.
Yeah, Google do the work. I will find that guy and put a link to him in the thing. I'm going to link your books. I'm going to link that picture you sent me.
It's the only reason I'm here. Just sell a book, tell her.
Now, don't say that, because we do this all the time. So don't act like talking to me is trying to sell a book.
All right, fine. You know, I like the what's the quote about? I don't know if this is from V for Vendetta or if they stole it, but it's sort of artists tell lies to tell the truth.
Yeah.
But I find artists, as a general rule, what they are is very good liars, as a general rule. And so they're just bullshitters, which is, I love it. I love when people just bullshit me. It's just so interesting. It's great. But you kind of get that. I feel that impulse just like rising up inside me whenever anybody asks me a question and they're looking for like this genuine human response. I just feel the impulse to say something ridiculous. You know what I mean?
You don't do that?
Oh, I do it. Absolutely.
You do it all the time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's shocking to you.
That you're full of shit? No.
Yeah.
That's
what I'm
shocking
saying.
as you would think.
But I don't, it's like a court jester is full of shit. I'm not doing it to be mean. I don't want to, like, there's people who are full of shit where you feel like a predatory kind of instinct.
Yeah.
For me, I'm just because, I don't know, because it's funnier. It's like telling a dramatic story is better than telling the factual story most of the time. It's like, man, wouldn't it have been cool if this actually happened?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do the same thing to the point where I have said so many crazy things to my kids that are just absolutely obviously not true, that now when I am telling them the truth that is weird,
Do they look at you like
they'll just immediately call bullshit, and I'll have to prove to them that I'm right. I was talking to them once about the platypus. Okay, we're at dinner. I'm talking to them about the platypus. I'm like, it's a really weird animal. And they're like, yeah. They start listing off, and I said, and it's venomous. And they were like, no. And I said, what? They're like, it's not venomous, Dad. That's not true. And I said, the platypus is venomous. And they're like, no, it's not. And I said, yes, it is. And they turned to Becca. And in times like this, she really wants to say it's not venomous, but she can't be sure. So she just goes, I don't know. So they argued with me about it all through dinner. And finally, I did bring them downstairs. And I typed up platypus and 10 weird things about the platypus. And the first one was on the back, I think, left foot of the platypus is a tiny thorn spike. And if it hits you, it's venomous. And they were like, what the hell? And then I didn't even realize I was doing it at one point. Because
you got to keep them guessing. They can't ever be sure.
Yeah. We're driving to the school. I've been up all night writing, and I'm just completely blasted and manic. And the kids are like, ugh. And Becca's like, ugh. And I'm just talking. And I said, when they made Justice League, they wanted Superman in it. But the guy who plays Superman was working on another show, and he had signed a contract that said he would never shave his mustache through the show because he had a big full mustache. I said, so in Justice League, Superman has a mustache, and my son Tobin's like, okay, Dad, that's not true. And I was like, what? And he goes, that's just not true. And everybody in the car's like, that's not true. And I said, they CGI'd it out. And he was like, no, they didn't. Superman never had a mustache. And so I was like, okay, I'm not lying to you this time. It's true. And they're like, oh, this is definitely a lie. And so while we were in the car line to drop off my oldest son, my wife had to pull out her phone to prove that, yes, Holmes did have a mustache, and they had to CGI it out. And there's a picture. Anyway, yeah, I tell so many, and it's flipped now. It went from everything Dad says is crazy to now it's on this side where it's like, is this just a crazy fact that Dad knows, or is he making this up?
You know what I think is so beautiful about that? Like, that's art, right? That when people read fiction, I mean, isn't that the point where you read it and you think, wait, is this crazy? Is this true? You know,
Yeah.
even if it's a fantastic setting, isn't the point of it? Maybe you don't. You know, this is why people who are like us are probably writers or comedians or whatever, because there's like a devil's advocate. There's just somebody who wants to poke at things to test if it's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is a platypus really poisonous? You know,
Yeah.
is that ridiculous? I don't know. You know, is your culture really true?
Yeah.
You know, is the narrative that we tell ourselves an accurate depiction of reality? I don't know. And I never have the answer, and I assume you don't either. We just like to ask questions. We like to say, well, let's find out. Let's put a dragon in it and call whatever group of people this other fake name, and, you know, twist it around a little bit so that it's not obviously the real world. And then let's just poke at it, you know, from 15 different angles and see what comes out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which leads me to something that I was going to ask you about genre. So what do you think about how does genre affect what you do? Do you think, okay, I'm writing an epic fantasy, and these are the things that I've got to, you know, these are the criteria that I've got to meet, or my fans are going to be pissed off? Or how does that affect how you write?
It's all about character. So, like, the Madness Wars is not. I did not write the Madness Wars to be an epic series, an epic length series, because I wanted to write some long books. I had a cast of characters that I was going to put through hell, and those characters all demanded a certain amount of page time, and that page time and that amount of characters demanded a certain length of book. So I didn't sit down to write an epic series when I wrote The Madness Wars, or The Mountain, which isn't going to come out for a while. I didn't sit down to write those epic books. I sat down to write the story of X number of characters.
Okay, so characters came first. Did you even have like world building done or anything like that, or did you just have the characters?
Okay, so I started running Dungeons and Dragons games when I was 7, and it was a lot of purple hippopotamus stuff in the beginning. But somewhere around, I guess it was 14, I started like gaming with the same group of people, adding to the story. And then at one point when I got to my junior year of high school, somebody inspired me to create my own world. I had been using worlds that were set out and preconceived by Dungeons and Dragons. That was TSR at the time, to game it. So I started my junior year. I started doing my own thing. Okay, I had to change the rules of the game in order to do what I needed it to do, and it became very. It was like you could still see that it was the same game. It was just like a silhouette of that game instead of a, you know. So that's when I started creating my world. So I ran games from probably 94 until 2004. And by the time I was done with that, I had used the same settings so many times, and I had used similar characters so many times that I was able to put together, start writing in a world that was very detailed already.
So you cheated. You're a dirty cheater.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Basically, it's kind of like what do they call it? Focus grouped the entire world for 10 years before I started writing it.
It's a horrifying way to look at it, but fair enough.
What about you? How did Ash and Sand build?
Well, I'll get there in a second, I guess. But first, I was going to say it's funny that the music thing is one piece of the writing puzzle, but with modern fantasy writers, D&D background is just about as ubiquitous as music. It's just about every fantasy writer you talk to is like, well, back when I was a kid and I was playing Dungeons and Dragons. It's unbelievable every time.
All the way up to Mark Lawrence.
Yeah, oh yeah, even the famous ones. It wasn't back when they were getting. I don't know. This was like maybe early 2000s. It still kind of wasn't cool. It wasn't the kind of thing that you said out loud. know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know when that shifted exactly. I guess when nerd culture started to dominate the West.
Yeah. Once nerds started becoming once geeks started becoming respected for our knowledge.
Once the tech giants like Jack Dorsey and these guys, once they got so powerful, and these are like the biggest nerds on earth, anything went at that point.
Yeah, it was pretty beautiful.
Well, pros and cons. Maybe we can talk about free speech a little later.
But Star Wars fans.
Yes. I mean, and I've got friends who are huge Trekkies and Star Wars nerds. I don't really go to conventions, that sort of thing. But I love that stuff. Anybody who can live in a fantasy world, God bless them. That's what I do all day. I can't. Who am I going to judge somebody? What the hell was I going to talk about? Oh, so the Ash and Sand world building. Yeah, I didn't get to. I didn't cheat like you did. I fashioned it the old-fashioned way. Yeah, I know.
You're calling me a cheater on air. That's a great friend. Thanks, Richard. Thanks a lot.
Well, what I really mean by cheating is you built it up slowly over many years of tried and true practice.
But the thing is, though, when I first started playing with that concrete group, they knew that it was going somewhere. It was really forming itself and getting the stories were getting real and all this kind of stuff, and they knew it was going somewhere. So a lot of the people were trying to make me a better dungeon master as players so that they could build me to do this job. So anyway, sorry, Ash and Sand, tell me about it.
Yeah. Oh, no worries. Well, I don't know. I'm not going to go into specifics, but basically my bread and butter, and this is something else I want to talk to you about, was history. Everything that I do basically is drawn from my own nerdiness, my own love of history, which really, in a way, outstrips my love of fantasy. So it's a bit confusing. I'm not sure why I always think in terms of fantasy when I think of story. Maybe because I think no story, no historical fiction story can ever beat history.
Yeah.
I think the actual stories of history, whether it's the conquest of New Spain or Mexico, or whether it's Greek stories or whatever it's so unbelievable that a modern person, it literally is unbelievable. Like we can't even mentally accept that this happened, that people went through this. And so in fiction, you're always sort of dumbing it down. You've got to simplify things. You've got to create a story with, 1/10 or 1/100th the characters and 1/50th the motivations and 1/50th the events, because it's just too much. You just can't grasp it all. So I think that's why I write fantasy ultimately. But all of my world building, and actually lot of my characters, a lot of just everything is inspired by real people or real cultures, and then I mix them and I throw in magic rocks or whatever the hell. But that's always the baseline.
Well, there was two things about that. I knew I was doing this job when I went to college, so I didn't major in writing. I majored in history with a double major in literature, and that's how I built this. I didn't major in writing.
Just instantly unemployable.
Yeah, basically, because I knew I was going to do this, which would be unemployable.
Yeah.
My wife's doing a thing with her phone, a flashlight, because it's low light in here. She's coloring a mandala. That's why you see that flicker. There's no lightning in the corner of my room or anything.
That's too bad.
Only because she's not writing poetry.
I was hoping you were seeing a portal open to another world, basically beside you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. So one day I was running a game. It was the end of the campaign. It was very big, lots of very powerful characters, and they were so interconnected with all the other heroes in the world that the two people I was playing with, my wife and this other woman, decided they were going to throw a party. And so they sent out invitations to all the great heroes of my world, and they all came to this party. And so we ran, I think, altogether we ran like 28 hours over 2 different sessions of this party, just like milling around talking and different events and all this kind of stuff. So afterwards, I was talking to them. We were kind of like cool down from that. I was talking to them afterwards, and they said, okay. And I said, what was your favorite part of the party? And she names off something, some scene that was in it. And I asked Becca hers. And then they said, what was your favorite scene? And I said, when Gris had the sparring match with Garrison. And they looked at me, and they looked at each other, and they looked at their notes, and I said, that never happened. And I was like, oh, but it did. In here, that was happening. I said, there was a lot of stuff you didn't see. And so like there's a character who's mentioned in Fate of Madness as a leader against the invasion that we never see. And we never knew his name. His name is mentioned in the 4th book. Well, the reason his name is mentioned in the 4th book is because I never got around to telling his story, but it was happening over here the whole time that the Madness Wars was happening around here. So I know his story, know where he's been, know what he fought, know why he was important, but none of my readers will ever know that, because the whole story is going in my head at the same time. And like it's hard sometimes to focus on what I'm telling and what needs to be told. So I get these.
It's guys like you tell her that screw the rest of us. It's sort of it's like Tolkien. It's like, oh, what language do your trees speak?
Okay, yeah, all right. I don't create languages.
I'm the iceberg writer, where it looks. I give the impression that there's like the iceberg underneath, but actually there's just the tip.
That's not.
So people are like, "Oh man, what is all this other? What's underneath?" And I'm like, I didn't actually create that. I just fooled you.
It's not true though. It's not true, and I'll tell you why it's not true. What you gave us was the iceberg. We saw the water. Okay. But if you wrote a book and you decided to put on some scuba gear, you could go under and show us the iceberg that's under it by continuing to tell stories in the same world. If you decided that you wanted to do another series,
and maybe I am.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So if you decided to do that, and you have, all you'd be doing is putting on scuba gear and showing us the underneath of the iceberg. So it's not that it's not there. It's just that you haven't written it yet.
Right. But then there's guys like you who've got like 6 years of material, and then you create the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. You screw guys like me, Teller.
Well, no, listen. Now, it's just because I'm crazy.
well, yes, I concur.
No, it's just because I'm crazy. That's the only reason my mind does that is because I'm crazy.
I see. So you're saying I can't judge you?
Don't judge me. And
like I'm punching down, basically.
Don't judge me, dude. Listen, I did some research. Wheel of Time was started. He started writing it in 80.
I think he said 84.
He started writing it in 84. It took 29 years to write, and it's 4 million. It's 4.4 million words. Okay. Now we're not talking about the prequel or the side books, just the Wheel of Time. It took him 29 years to write, and that's an amazing accomplishment. It's an amazing accomplishment.
Or it's a feat of madness.
Well, the madness kicks in when you realize that I've written 6.1 million in 10 years. And I'm starting to ask myself a question that my wife hates, and you're going to hear her yell about it in the background, but who's going to read all this?
People are going to read it.
I don't know. And so what I do is I cut it up into manageable pieces. Okay? So, like, if you just want to read The Manhunters, you can just read that and it's good. You couldn't do that with Wheel of Time.
Right.
If you start with Wheel of Time, you have to read all of Wheel of Time. But if you go to my work, you can just read The Manhunters and have an entire story.
Yeah,
I've done that all the way through. I just break them up into series. And but it's not because it's just because there's certain things built into my mind and the way that I think and the fact that I'm not sane, and that makes it so that these things are possible. You know what I'm saying?
Vague. Yeah.
What?
I said vaguely.
Okay.
Because I think normal people can't quite comprehend 6 million, was it? Words?
6.1.
I mean, even I feel like I write long books.
You do.
And the trilogy, the Ashen Century combined is what? 600,000 words. So, it's just it's literally an order of magnitude higher. Like, it's just crazy to me. Even Wheel of Time. Like, I think I read a quarter of the first Wheel of Time book, and then I realized how big it was. And I had the attention span of a squirrel, and I just went, okay, well, that's another shiny thing. And off I went. Same thing happened when I read Malazan. I got a quarter way through Gardens of the Moon, and I'm just like, this is hard. I'm not up for it right now. I was out. But what I've noticed is that most people, well, a lot of fantasy readers, and you see this even in television, where people will just binge and they'll watch like an entire series or entire season at least, just like in 2 days.
Yeah.
And I see that with books. You know how you can see the Kindle Unlimited reads, where it shows you how many pages somebody has read or whatever. I started to realize that the numbers were coming out exact. Like, somebody would read a full book. It would be 1 day, and somebody would have read 2 books back to back.
Yeah.
I just never do that, but people do that, right? That seems to be common fantasy behavior.
Yeah, there's some beautiful readers out there who just
it's amazing
word, and they love to be in it. And you can't. I don't think you can submerge as much in a visual story as you can in a written story. And so these people are amazing, and they just love fantasy, and they just like they'll just sink in it and go. You know.
Yeah, it's why one of those writers that kind of act almost jealous if they see that their readers are reading somebody else, and I just think, Christ, these readers, they destroy. Like, you couldn't write enough words to satisfy these people, no matter what you did. I mean, they're just unbelievable.
Well, that brings up another point that I came across when I first started publishing, and that's that none of us are enemies. You know?
No,
Like, because
no,
you're not going to write so many books, and I'm not going to write so many books that my readers are not going to read your readers. You know what I'm saying?
no.
And those readers are also going to read M.L. Spencer and The Cake Eater. And they're all going to, there's so many dedicated, amazing readers who just love it so much they'll devour the whole thing and move on to the next thing and devour that thing too and move on to the next thing. And, you know, your readers are also my readers. And so there's no reason for us to compete.
God help them all. All right, so one thing I wanted to talk about, and you can pass this football if you want, because I know you've got your 2 rules, which you mentioned no politics. Wait, what was the other one? Oh, no trash talking people, which that's a good rule. And I don't like politics either. It bores me, and I don't think people listen to fiction writers to talk about politics. But one thing that we still pay the price for it. We pay the price of culture, let's say.
Okay.
And so how do you sort of make sense of the modern culture? Like, what do you read the news? Do you listen to sources of information? Like, what do you do?
It's hard for me to pay attention to what's going on. Because I'm not really capable of grasping it very well. Like, I can read an article and bring it to my wife. I can read another article and bring it to my wife. But like big story, what's happening in the world stuff, I can't really grasp what's happening out there because I'm trapped in what's happening out here.
Yeah, no, I get it.
So my wife kind of like guides me,
Just say, Becca, what's the truth?
Yeah, stuff like that. It's gotten to a point now where it is so oppressive. The story in my head is so oppressive that when I get to a certain point at night, I can't find my way to my bedroom. I can't find my way to the garage. I have to put my hands on Becca's shoulders, and she'll take me to the garage. She'll take me to my bedroom. She'll take me to my office, all this kind of stuff. My kids will do this. My kids are helping their dad around the house because once I've been awake for a certain amount of time, the fantasy world starts to come out. So I'll see characters and I'll like have conversations, and it's because this has kind of soaked out into the world and nothing's real anymore. So when it comes to current events and news and stuff, a lot of times my wife has to guide me through it.
Not worrying about it.
What?
I see. Yeah, that's funny.
I am worried about it, but I just can't make sense of it. Are you there? You froze. Are you there? Did I lose you? I think the thing.
There he is.
Oh wait. Okay, you're there.
Yep.
Okay, we froze for a minute.
Yep. Yeah. Well, the reason I ask is just because, well, some writers they look out at the culture and that guides what they do. Maybe there's something that they don't like, or there's something that they find interesting or curious, and then they'll react to that. Doesn't sound like that's you. Sounds like you are totally just letting it stew in your intuition and your own imagination and just letting it out.
There are times of the day when I'm very lucid. When my wife, I live on, I have this disorder called non 24-hour wake sleep disorder, to where my body is my natural cycle is set to 48 hours instead of 24 hours. So, like for instance, right now I've been awake for 21 hours, and I won't go to bed for another 12. So, during the beginning of the day, I'm kind of out of it. Somewhere around 7, things get firm, all the way until 2, when my wife goes to bed, things are firm. And then from 2 to 10 is usually a little confusing, and that's when I'm writing. And then I'm very lucid between 10 and 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 10 in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. On the days when I'm up at that time, I'm very
You're
lucid.
7 minutes past midnight, basically, right now.
What?
You're 7 minutes past midnight right now. It's
Oh
2:07.
yeah, I'm losing. I'm going soon. Yeah. But between 10 and 2, I'm very lucid, and that's when we talk about the most important things going on and all that kind of stuff. Around 2 and definitely at about 4, things start getting hard to hold on to. So that's what's so like the current events thing, like I'm aware of it at certain times of the day, and then other times of the day it just completely escapes me. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's just interesting because it's, we live in a time where trying to figure out what's happening seems to be difficult. Like our sensory organs are not working so well, it seems.
right.
There's so much information. There's so much that I find, because I'm always trying to absorb the culture. I'm always trying to absorb what people are saying and thinking. And it's just so much that it's like, you got to find your sources. Like, what are your pipelines?
Right.
So I'm always curious what other people do.
Yeah. All right, I think I have to go.
All right, man.
This is getting long, and I'm gonna keep every moment of it because you're gold. So, it's so great to see you again, man. I did notice that you spruced your hair up and you're actually wearing a respectable shirt. So
What's left of my hair? It's thinning.
Next time, none of that shit. Okay. You come in the hoodie and the t-shirt that I usually see you in.
Become who I truly am.
But you clean up nice. Okay. Thanks for coming to talk to me, man. I'll see you again soon.
Anytime, buddy. Yep. Let's talk anytime you like.
All right. Cool. Later.
Okay, so that was a Cannibal. We got to talk to Richard now. He's, as you can tell, he's an amazing guy. A great fantasy mind. I wanted to say one thing that we did talk about was poetry. And he had a lot to say about how he doesn't like modern poetry. And I actually have access to 2 modern poets. There are some brilliant poets that I work with in my writers group. And I'm going to try to get them to come on here and talk about the other side of poetry and why they find value in modern poetry. One of them is a good friend's wife, and she's also a good friend, but that's how I met her. Her name is Ashley Underwood, and the other one is the teacher that I was talking about that got me back into writing. We reconnected when I got older, and we started this group, and she's a major part of my life now. That was my teacher who applauded me after the jack-o'-lantern story and all of that. And she's a poet, and maybe we can get them on here and get them to talk to us about modern poetry, and we can get the other side of that and get the value what they think is the value and of modern poetry and try to learn more about what's going on with that. Okay, now I promised you I was going to show you a couple of things on my desk, and I actually just showed you the one thing, the note cards. So before I get off here, I'm going to show you a couple more. Now, we were talking about stones the other day. Last week we were talking about lapis lazuli, and I wanted to show you this. I've got this gigantic piece of tiger eye, and I've heard that it has some really good properties and gives off some really good energies. So I don't know if you believe in that thing, but it looks like a piece of wood, but it's actually a very large piece of tiger eye. So I got that. And the other thing I wanted to show you was my giraffe box. It's got a little giraffe on it. And this was given to me by my alpha reader and very, very good friend. And it opens like this. And on the inside, I have pins, little tiny pins, that I use to mark spots that are significant on the map that I've got on the wall. And you may have seen it in some of the photos. You'll see it again. We'll talk about it. But that's the other things on the desk that I wanted to show you. Anyway, okay. So that's the show today. I think I'm going to start calling it a show. Some people call it a channel. It feels more like a show to me. I haven't decided yet. So, in the comments, I want to hear anything you have to say about poetry, be it old style or the new style, the modern style. Maybe give me some questions that we can ask Ashley and Charlotte. Now, I haven't even talked to them about whether they want to be on the show or whether they could be on the show or anything like that. So they might not be interested in it. So we might not see them. But if you have any questions for what we could ask them, throw that in there. And any other things you want to say, I guess. Anyway, I told you about what I don't want to say, so I'm not going to say it, but do the things, and I will see you next week. All right, bye.